Captain Jake Morrison stared at the flashing red lights on his control panel and felt his stomach drop. The Wanderer had been humanity's first attempt at faster-than-light travel, and now it was spinning out of control through space like a broken toy. "Lisa, tell me you can fix this," he called out to his chief engineer over the screaming alarms. Lisa Park was already crawling under the main console, sparks flying around her head. "The navigation computer is completely fried, Captain. We jumped blind and now we're falling out of hyperspace with no idea where we are." The ship shuddered violently as it dropped back into normal space. Through the main view screen, Jake saw a blue and green planet growing larger by the second. It was beautiful, covered in swirling white clouds and vast oceans, but right now it looked like their grave. "Everyone strap in," Jake shouted over the intercom. "We're going down hard." Ben Carter, the science officer, gripped his chair as the ship bucked like an angry horse. "Captain, I'm reading a breathable atmosphere and Earth-like gravity. If we can survive the landing, we might actually live through this." The Wanderer hit the planet's atmosphere like a stone skipping on water. The hull screamed as it heated up, and Jake fought to keep the ship level. Trees rushed up toward them, thick green forest stretching as far as he could see. "Brace for impact," was all Jake had time to say before the world exploded around them. When Jake woke up, his head was pounding and smoke filled the bridge. Amy Clark, their medical officer, was already moving between the crew members, checking for injuries. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood, but her hands were steady as she worked. "Report," Jake croaked, pulling himself out of his captain's chair. 17 injured, 3 serious, Amy said without looking up from the unconscious navigator. "We need to get the worst cases to the medical bay immediately." Jake nodded and activated his communicator. "All hands, this is the captain. Sound, off by departments." The responses came in slowly. Most of the crew had survived, though many were hurt. The ship itself was another story. Lisa's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. "Captain, we're not flying anywhere anytime soon. The main engines are scrap metal, and the hull has more holes than a piece of cheese. We'll need months of repairs, assuming we can find the right materials." Jake looked out through a crack in the view screen at the alien forest surrounding them. Massive trees with purple bark stretched up toward a sky that was just a little too green to be Earth's. Strange bird-like creatures flitted between the branches, making sounds like nothing he had ever heard. "Ben, start scanning the area. I want to know everything about this place." "Amy, set up a field hospital. Lisa, assess what we need for repairs. Everyone else, we're setting up a perimeter. Until we know what's out there, we treat this as a hostile environment." Ryan Stone, their security chief, was already organizing the crew into guard shifts. He was a big man with scars on his hands from his military days, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who had been in tight spots before. "Captain, I've got motion sensors picking up large animals about 2 kilometers out. Nothing approaching yet, but we should get some walls up before nightfall." Jake nodded. They had crash-landed on an unknown world with no way to call for help. Their only choice was to survive long enough to fix their ship and get home. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The crew worked together to clear debris from around the ship and set up a basic camp. They dragged supplies from the cargo holds and established a communications center in the shadow of the Wanderer's broken hull. Greg Hayes, their communications officer, had managed to get the emergency beacon working. Every few minutes it sent out a distress signal toward Earth, though everyone knew it would take years for any response to reach them across the vast distance of space. As the alien sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Jake stood at the edge of their makeshift camp and wondered what they had gotten themselves into. The forest around them was alive with sounds, clicks and whistles and low rumbling calls that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ben Carter joined him at the perimeter. The science officer had his scanner in hand and was taking readings of everything around them. "Beautiful and dangerous," Jake replied. "What have you found?" "The good news is the air is perfectly breathable, and the gravity is only slightly heavier than Earth normal. The soil is rich, and there's fresh water about half a kilometer north. The bad news is I'm picking up some very large life forms moving through the forest. Some of them are bigger than anything that ever lived on Earth. As if summoned by his words, a deep roar echoed through the trees. It was followed by the sound of something massive crashing through the underbrush. The crew members nearest the forest edge grabbed their weapons and backed toward the ship. Jake felt his heart racing. They had come to the stars as explorers, but they were about to become something else entirely. They were about to become survivors. "Double the watch tonight," he ordered. "And make sure everyone knows to shoot first and ask questions later. We don't know what's out there, but we're not going to let it kill us without a fight." Unknown to the humans, their arrival had not gone unnoticed. High in the purple-barked trees, a pair of golden eyes watched the strange creatures as they built their camp. The watcher was tall and thin, with scaled skin that shifted color to match the bark around it. Its name was Vextai, and it served as a scout for the Zalari, the people who had called this world home for thousands of years. Vextai had never seen anything like these newcomers. They walked on two legs like the Zalari, but their skin was smooth and pale, and they covered themselves with strange materials. Their tools were crude but effective, and they moved with a purpose that spoke of intelligence. But what worried Vextai most was their immediate response to danger. When the forest roar had echoed through the trees, these creatures had not fled or hidden. Instead, they had reached for weapons. They were prepared for violence in a way that made the Zalari scout uneasy. Vextai activated a small communication device and spoke in the clicking, musical language of its people. "Elder Thessera, the Sky-Fallen Ones are not what we expected. They build quickly and arm themselves faster. They show no respect for the sacred places, and their tools leak poison into the ground." The response came back immediately. "Continue watching, Vextai. The Council must know everything about these intruders before we decide their fate." As the alien night deepened, both groups prepared for what was to come. The humans worked to strengthen their defenses, while in the trees above, the Zalari scouts took careful note of every weapon, every movement, every sign of the violent nature that would soon change both their worlds forever. Jake Morrison stood the first watch, staring out into the dark forest and listening to the alien sounds that surrounded their tiny island of human civilization. He had no way of knowing that their ship had crashed in the most sacred place on the planet, or that every breath they took and every step they made was being judged by beings who had already decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed among the stars. The real story of humanity's arrival in the galaxy was about to begin, and it would be everything the aliens feared it would be. 3 weeks had passed since the Wanderer crashed on the alien world, and the human camp had grown into something that looked almost like a small town. Captain Jake Morrison stood on top of a makeshift watchtower, looking out over the work his crew had accomplished. They had built walls from fallen trees, set up workshops under canvas tents, and even established a small garden where Amy Clark was trying to grow earth vegetables in alien soil. The sound of heavy machinery echoed through the forest as Karen Miller's geological team worked the mining operation they had started near the river. The red-haired geologist had discovered rich deposits of metals they needed for ship repairs, and her team was pulling tons of ore from the ground every day. "Captain, you need to see this," Greg Hayes called from the communications tent. The young officer's face was excited as he pointed to his equipment. "I've been boosting our distress signal, and I'm finally getting some kind of response. It's not from Earth, though. There's something else out there, something close." Jake climbed down from the tower and walked over to examine Greg's readings. The patterns on the screen looked artificial, like organized communication rather than natural space noise. "How close?" Jake asked. "Maybe a few light years. The signals are strong and getting stronger. Captain, I think there might be other intelligent life in this system." Before Jake could respond, a commotion erupted from the mining site. Shouting voices carried across the camp, and Jake could see people running. He grabbed his radio and headed toward the disturbance. "What's the situation?" he called into the device as he jogged toward the river. Ryan Stone's voice crackled back. "We've got visitors, Captain, and they don't look happy." Jake rounded the bend in the path and stopped dead in his tracks. Standing at the edge of the mining operation were 3 creatures unlike anything he had ever imagined. They were tall and thin, maybe 7 feet high, with scaled skin that shimmered between green and gold. Their faces were elongated, almost snake-like, but their eyes held an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. The lead creature held something in its clawed hands. It looked like a gift, wrapped in what appeared to be woven plant fibers and decorated with small stones that caught the light. The alien was speaking, making musical sounds that rose and fell like a song. "It's trying to communicate," Ben Carter said, approaching with his scanner. "The sounds have structure like language. And look at what it's carrying. That's definitely a gift of some kind." Karen Miller emerged from behind one of the mining machines, her face pale. "Captain, I think we might have made a mistake. We've been digging right next to what looks like some kind of shrine. There are carved stones arranged in patterns, and we've been dumping our wastewater right into their sacred pool." Jake felt his stomach tighten. First contact with alien life, and they had already made a mess of it. He stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. "Hello," he said simply. "We're sorry if we've disturbed your land." The lead alien tilted its head and made more musical sounds. Then, to everyone's surprise, it spoke in broken English. "You hurt, sacred place, water, and a poison. Why you do this thing?" The humans exchanged shocked glances. The alien had learned their language just from listening to their radio communications. "We didn't know," Jake said carefully. "We crashed here by accident. We're trying to fix our ship so we can leave." The alien's companions made agitated sounds and gestured toward the mining operation. The leader held up the gift again and spoke more English words, clearly struggling with the unfamiliar sounds. "I am Vextai. We watch you. You take much. From ground. You make water sick. Elder Thessera send gift, but also send warning. You must stop hurt sacred place." Jake looked around at the mining equipment, the piles of excavated earth and the settling ponds where they had been processing ore. From the alien's perspective, it must look like they were destroying the landscape. "We need these materials to repair our ship," Jake explained. "Without them, we can't leave your world." Vextai's golden eyes narrowed. The alien spoke rapidly to its companions in their musical language, and Jake could hear the tension rising in their voices. Other aliens began emerging from the forest, dozens of them, all watching the humans with expressions that were becoming less friendly by the minute. "You say you leave, but you take everything with you," Vextai said. "How we know you speak truth? How we know you not take our world piece by piece?" Tony Webb, one of the engineers, chose that moment to restart the water pumps. Dirty water from the mining operation began flowing into the river again, and the aliens reacted immediately. Several of them made harsh sounds that were clearly expressions of anger. "Stop the pumps," Jake ordered, but it was too late. The damage was done. Vextai dropped the gift and stepped backward. The alien's skin color shifted to deeper, more aggressive shades of red and orange. "You lie with words, but truth with actions," Vextai said. "You say sorry, but keep making poison. Elder was right about sky people. You destroy everything you touch." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Jake could see his crew reaching for their weapons, while more and more aliens appeared at the forest edge. This was about to go very wrong very quickly. "Wait," Jake said, holding up his hands. "Let us fix this. We can clean the water. We can move our operation away from your sacred places." But Vextai was already backing away. The alien reached toward what looked like a decorative belt around its waist, and Corporal Chris Davis, standing guard with the security team, saw the movement as a threat. "Gun," Davis shouted, and fired his rifle before anyone could stop him. The energy blast caught Vextai in the shoulder, spinning the alien around and dropping it to the ground. The other aliens scattered immediately, some carrying their wounded leader, others melting back into the forest like ghosts. "Why did you shoot?" Jake demanded, rushing to Davis's position. "It was reaching for a weapon, sir," the young Marine replied, but his voice was shaking. "I thought it was going to attack." Ben Carter was scanning the area where Vextai had fallen. "Captain, there's no weapon here. Whatever the alien was reaching for, it wasn't a gun." Jake knelt down and picked up the object that Vextai had dropped. It was clearly ceremonial, made of carved wood and decorated with the same stones as the gift. It looked like some kind of peace offering or ritual item. We just shot their diplomat, Jake said quietly. We just shot someone who came here to make peace. The forest around them had gone completely silent. No bird calls, no rustling in the trees, nothing. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Amy Clark ran up with her medical kit. Is the alien still alive? Maybe I can help. They took their wounded with them, Ryan Stone reported. But Captain, we've got bigger problems. My motion sensors are picking up movement all around us. Lots of movement. I think they're surrounding the camp. Jake looked around at his crew. They were engineers and scientists, not soldiers. They had come to the stars to explore and discover, not to start wars. But war seemed to be finding them anyway. All personnel back to base camp, he ordered. Full defensive positions, and somebody shut down that mining operation before we make this any worse. As the humans retreated to their fortified camp, Vextai was being carried through the forest by fellow Zalari. The alien diplomat was unconscious but alive, and the wound would heal. But the damage to relations between the two species might be permanent. Elder Thessera received the news with sadness, but not surprise. The humans had proven exactly what the Zalari had feared they would prove. They were destroyers, violent and unpredictable, willing to shoot first and regret later. The Elder activated the long-range communication system and began composing a message that would travel to every Zalari colony in the galaxy. The message was simple. The Sky People were dangerous, and they could not be allowed to spread their violence to other worlds. Jake Morrison stood in his command tent and stared at the tactical displays showing alien movement in the forest around them. In less than an hour, they had gone from making first contact to preparing for a siege. Greg, boost that distress signal, he ordered. Tell Earth that we've made contact with alien life and we're about to be at war with them. But Greg's response made Jake's blood run cold. Captain, I'm not picking up any response from Earth, but I am getting new signals from the outer system. Big ships, Captain. Lots of them. And they're headed this way. The real story of humanity's violent arrival in the galaxy was just beginning. The alien ships appeared in the sky like dark clouds gathering before a storm. Captain Jake Morrison counted at least 20 vessels through his binoculars, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They moved with smooth precision, taking positions around the planet in a perfect blockade formation. My God, Ben Carter whispered, standing beside Jake on the observation platform they had built. Look at the size of those things. The smallest one is bigger than our entire ship. Jake lowered his binoculars and felt the weight of doom settling on his shoulders. 3 days had passed since the shooting incident with Vextai, and now it seemed the consequences were arriving from space. Greg, are you getting any communications from those ships? Jake called down to the communications tent. Yes, sir, Greg Hayes replied, his voice tight with worry. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Some of it I can't understand, but they're definitely trying to talk to us. Before Jake could respond, the air above the camp began to shimmer. A beam of light descended from the largest alien ship, and when it faded, 3 figures stood in the center of the human compound. The humans immediately raised their weapons, but Jake held up his hand. Hold your fire, he ordered. The central figure was unlike the Zalari they had met before. This creature was shorter and broader, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. It wore what looked like a military uniform covered in symbols and decorations. When it spoke, its voice came through a small device that translated its words into perfect English. I am Admiral Keithavar of the Galactic Preservation Coalition. You will surrender immediately for processing as ecological criminals and threats to galactic security. Jake stepped forward, trying to project more confidence than he felt. I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Wanderer. We're explorers on a peaceful mission. Our presence here is the result of an accident. Admiral Keithavar's 4 eyes focused on Jake with what looked like contempt. There are no accidents when it comes to your species, human. We have been watching your kind for over 300 of your years. We know exactly what you are. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. You've been watching Earth? Your planet was classified as a quarantine world in what you call the year 1687, the Admiral continued. Your species was deemed too dangerous for contact with galactic civilization. You were to remain isolated until you either evolved past your destructive tendencies or destroyed yourselves. Dr. Pete Chang pushed through the crowd of humans, his face pale but determined. As the mission's xenobiologist, he had dreamed of this moment his entire life, but not like this. "What do you mean, too dangerous?" Pete asked. "We're explorers, scientists. We came here in peace." Admiral Kethvar gestured toward the mining operation in the fortified camp. "You crash-landed on a protected world and immediately began stripping it of resources. You contaminated sacred waters within days of arrival. When the native Zalari attempted peaceful contact, you shot their diplomat. This is exactly the behavior we expected from humans." Amy Clark stepped up beside Pete, her medical training making her focus on the practical questions. "How many species are in this galactic community? How long has it existed?" "The Coalition represents 47 civilized species across this galaxy," the Admiral replied. "We have maintained peace and ecological balance for over 5,000 years. No species has ever been as destructive as humans in such a short time." Lisa Park emerged from behind one of the defensive barriers, her engineer's mind working on the technical aspects. "If you've been watching us for centuries, why didn't you make contact? Why let us develop space travel if you were just going to stop us?" "Because we hoped you would never achieve interstellar flight," Admiral Kethvar said bluntly. "Your species has destroyed more of your own planet in the last 2 centuries than most civilizations damage in millennia. You wage constant war, poison your environment, and consume resources without thought for the future. We believed you would exhaust your world's resources and collapse before reaching the stars." The truth hit the humans like a series of hammer blows. Everything they had thought about humanity's place in the universe was wrong. They weren't brave explorers taking their first steps into a larger galaxy. They were contamination that had escaped quarantine. Ryan Stone, ever the soldier, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "What happens now?" "You will be taken to Coalition headquarters for trial," Admiral Kethvar replied. "Your fate will be decided by the Council of Species. Given the severity of your violations, the likely outcome is permanent imprisonment or execution." Jake felt anger rising alongside the fear. "Violations? We didn't even know you existed. How can you judge us for breaking laws we never heard of?" "Ignorance is not an excuse for destruction," the Admiral said coldly. "Your ship's databases contain detailed records of your species' history, wars, genocides, environmental destruction, resource depletion. Even without knowing galactic law, you knew the difference between creation and destruction. You chose destruction." Ben Carter was scanning the alien visitors with his handheld device, and his readings were confirming their worst fears. "Captain, their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Energy shields, artificial gravity control, weapons that could level our entire camp in seconds. We can't fight them. You cannot run either," Admiral Kethvar added, apparently able to understand their conversations. "Your ship is damaged beyond repair with your current technology. This world is now under complete blockade. You have no choice but to surrender." Jake looked around at his crew, at the people he had led across the stars, only to trap them in this impossible situation. They were engineers, scientists, and explorers, not criminals. But apparently, in the eyes of the galaxy, being human was crime enough. "What about the Zalari?" Amy asked. "The native people of this world. What do they want?" "The Zalari have requested that you be removed from their sacred world immediately," Admiral Kethvar replied. "They consider your presence a contamination that grows worse with each day you remain." Pete Chang was still processing the enormity of what they had learned. "You said you've been watching us for 300 years. What exactly have you seen?" The Admiral's expression grew even more grim. "We watched you nearly destroy yourselves with global wars. We saw you poison your rivers and oceans. We observed you drive species to extinction for profit. We recorded your expansion into space, where you immediately began planning to do the same to other worlds. Every prediction our scientists made about human behavior has proven correct. But we've also done good things," Pete protested. "We've created art, music, literature. We've helped each other, saved lives, explored the unknown." "Yes," Admiral Kethvar acknowledged. "Your species is capable of great beauty and compassion. This is what makes you so dangerous. You are not simple destroyers who can be easily dismissed. You are intelligent destroyers who justify your actions with noble words. History shows that such species are the most destructive of all. Greg Hayes looked up from his communication equipment. Captain, I'm picking up more ships arriving in the outer system. Looks like reinforcements. Admiral Kethvar nodded. The Coalition takes no chances with quarantine breaches. If necessary, we are prepared to use overwhelming force to contain the human threat. Jake realized they were at a crossroads that would determine not just their fate, but possibly the fate of all humanity. If they surrendered, they would likely die, but Earth might remain safely hidden. If they fought, they would certainly die, but they might die as free humans rather than as criminals. I need time to consider your terms, Jake said finally. You have 1 hour, Admiral Kethvar replied. After that, we will assume you have chosen resistance and we will respond accordingly. The alien figures disappeared in another beam of light, leaving the humans alone with the weight of an impossible decision. They had come to the stars as explorers and discovered they were seen as a plague. Now they had to choose between surrender and death, or resistance and death. But Jake Morrison was beginning to realize there might be a third option. If the galaxy saw humans as dangerous, maybe it was time to show them exactly how dangerous humans could be when they had nothing left to lose. The hour was ticking away, and with it humanity's last chance to prove they deserved a place among the stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of his crew and looked at each face around him. The alien ultimatum had given them 1 hour to decide, and 57 minutes had already passed. In 3 minutes, the Coalition fleet would assume they had chosen to fight. We can't win, Ben Carter said quietly. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. One of those ships could destroy our entire camp in seconds. Maybe we can't win a straight fight, Jake replied. But that doesn't mean we have to lose lying down. Ryan Stone was checking his weapon for the 10th time. The security chief's military training was showing as he prepared for what seemed like certain death. Captain, if we're going to fight, we need to be smart about it. Hit and run tactics. Make them pay for every inch. Lisa Park looked up from the explosive charges she had been preparing. I've rigged the mining equipment to blow. If they try to take the camp, we can deny them the resources and maybe take some of them with us. Amy Clark was packing her medical supplies, her face grim but determined. I've set up aid stations in 3 different locations. When the shooting starts, we'll need to keep our people alive as long as possible. Greg Hayes was still monitoring the alien communications. Captain, they're talking to each other up there. I can't understand most of it, but I'm picking up what sounds like battle preparations. Jake nodded and activated the camp-wide communication system. His voice echoed from speakers throughout the human settlement. Attention all personnel. In 2 minutes, we're going to send a message to the galaxy. We're going to show them that humans don't go quietly into the night. We may be outnumbered and outgunned, but we're not beaten. Remember who we are. We're explorers, engineers, and scientists. But today we're something else. Today we're free humans who refuse to be judged by those who never gave us a chance. The crew members took their positions behind the barricades and fortifications they had built. Karen Miller clutched a mining laser that had been converted into a weapon. Tony Webb had jury-rigged several of their construction robots into mobile gun platforms. Pete Chang carried a case full of biological samples he had collected, determined that Earth would at least know what they had found on this world. The hour expired. Energy beams lanced down from the alien ships, striking the outer walls of the human camp. The barriers Lisa had built held for a few seconds before exploding into splinters and flame, but instead of the humans cowering behind cover, they responded immediately with return fire. The aliens had expected surrender or panic. They had not expected the humans to fight back with such fierce coordination. Energy bolts and projectile weapons fired from concealed positions throughout the camp, targeting the alien landing forces that materialized in beams of light. Lieutenant Sam Brooks led the first counterattack, taking a squad of crew members armed with converted tools and homemade weapons. They hit the alien forces from the side, using the forest for cover as they moved from position to position. They're not used to this kind of fighting, Sam reported over the radio. They move in formation, follow patterns. They don't adapt quickly to chaos. The aliens were discovering that humans fought very differently from any species they had encountered before. Where other civilizations conducted warfare according to honor codes and established rules, humans seemed to have no such limitations. They used ambush tactics, targeted support equipment, and showed no hesitation about using their own damaged ship as a weapon. Lisa Park had turned the Wanderer itself into a fortress, mounting their remaining energy weapons on the hull and using the ship's power core to boost their defensive shields. When a group of alien soldiers tried to approach from the river, she opened the ship's cargo bay and released a flood of mining chemicals into the water, creating a toxic barrier that forced the aliens to retreat. Admiral Kethvar watched the battle from his flagship, his 4 eyes wide with surprise. The human resistance was far more effective than any of his tactical computers had predicted. His forces had superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but the humans were making them pay dearly for every advance. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, "We've lost 12 soldiers and 3 assault vehicles. The humans are using unconventional tactics that our battle protocols don't account for." "How is this possible?" Admiral Kethvar demanded. "They're primitives with barely functional weapons." "They're not fighting like any civilized species, sir. They target our medics. They booby-trap their wounded. They use their own people as decoys. They're breaking every law of warfare." On the ground, Corporal Chris Davis was proving that his earlier mistake with Vextai had not shaken his nerve. He led a team that captured an alien communication device, giving Greg Hayes access to coalition battle frequencies. For the first time, the humans could hear what their enemies were saying. "They're calling for reinforcements," Greg reported, "but they're also arguing among themselves. Some of their officers are questioning the attack." Jake realized this was their chance. If the coalition forces were having doubts, maybe they could exploit those divisions. He grabbed a portable transmitter and began broadcasting on all alien frequencies. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Expedition. We came to your galaxy as explorers, not conquerors. You judged us without giving us a chance to prove what we could be. You're attacking us for crimes we committed in ignorance of your existence. Is this the justice of your advanced civilization?" The transmission reached not just the coalition fleet, but was automatically relayed through their communication network to other species across the galaxy. For the first time, many alien civilizations were hearing humanity's side of the story. The battle continued through the alien night. The humans used the darkness to their advantage, moving between prepared positions and striking at coalition forces before melting back into the forest. They had learned to use the planet's terrain, the local wildlife, even the weather to their advantage. Dr. Pete Chang made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing alien equipment captured during the fighting, he found that coalition technology relied heavily on automated systems and artificial intelligence. The aliens had become so dependent on their advanced technology that they had forgotten how to adapt and improvise. "Captain," Pete called over the radio, "they're fighting like robots. Everything they do follows a program. If we can disrupt their systems, we can level the playing field." Tony Webb, the engineer, took Pete's discovery and ran with it. Using parts salvaged from the Wanderer and alien equipment captured in battle, he built a device that could disrupt coalition communication networks. When he activated it, the alien forces suddenly found themselves cut off from their command structure and automated support systems. The effect was immediate. Coalition soldiers who had been moving with perfect coordination suddenly became confused and disorganized. Their weapons systems began malfunctioning, and their tactical displays went dark. "Now," Jake shouted into his communicator. "All units, full attack." The humans burst from their concealed positions, pressing their advantage while the aliens struggled with their failing technology. For a few crucial minutes, the technologically advanced coalition forces were helpless against human ingenuity and determination. But the victory was temporary. Admiral Kethvar, furious at the unexpected resistance, ordered his ships to begin orbital bombardment. Energy beams powerful enough to level mountains began charging in the weapons arrays of the coalition fleet. "Captain," Amy Clark called from her aid station, "if they start bombing from orbit, these fortifications won't protect us." Jake looked up at the alien ships preparing to destroy them all and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. He activated the emergency beacon that would broadcast their final message to Earth and any other humans who might someday venture into space. This is Captain Jake Morrison, final transmission. We found intelligent life among the stars, and they fear us. They judge us not for what we've done to them, but for what they think we might do. They call us violent and destructive, and maybe they're right. But we're also brave and clever, and we don't give up. Remember that, if anyone ever hears this. Humans don't surrender, even when the odds are impossible. As the orbital bombardment began, the human camp became a blazing inferno, but even as their world burned around them, the crew of the Wanderer continued to fight, sending a message to the galaxy that would change everything. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they had arrived exactly as violent and unwelcome as everyone had feared. But they had also proven something else. They had proven that being human meant never accepting defeat, no matter how hopeless the situation became. The orbital bombardment stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Captain Jake Morrison lifted his head from the smoking rubble that had been his command post and tried to understand why he was still alive. Around him, the human camp was a scene of destruction, but many of his crew were still breathing, still moving, still fighting. "Status report," he called into his damaged communicator. "Mining facility is gone," Lisa Park's voice crackled back. "But I triggered the charges before they could destroy it completely. The explosion took out 2 of their landing ships. Medical stations are holding," Amy Clark reported. "Casualties are heavy, but we're still operational." Jake looked up at the alien fleet hanging in the sky above them. The ships were still there, weapons still charged, but they had stopped firing. Something had changed. The answer came from Greg Hayes, who was working frantically over his damaged communication equipment. "Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from all over the galaxy. Our final broadcast, it went out on their relay network. Every species in the coalition heard it." Before Jake could respond, the familiar shimmer of alien transportation technology appeared in the center of the ruined camp. Admiral Kethvar materialized, but this time he was alone and his weapons were not drawn. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said, his translator device making his voice sound tired. "We need to talk." Jake struggled to his feet, blood running down, his face from a head wound. Around him, his crew maintained their defensive positions, weapons trained on the alien commander. The trust between species had been broken by violence, and it would not be easily repaired. "Talk about what?" Jake asked. "About how you're going to finish killing us? About how your transmission has caused chaos across the coalition?" "Admiral," Kethvar replied, 17 species are demanding a full review of our quarantine policies. 3 member worlds have threatened to leave the coalition if we execute your crew without a proper trial." Dr. Pete Chang emerged from behind a collapsed wall, his scientific mind immediately grasping the implications. "Our message changed their minds. Your message asked questions that many species have been afraid to ask," the Admiral admitted. "Whether it is just to judge a people before giving them a chance to prove themselves. Whether the coalition has become so focused on preventing change that we have forgotten how to allow growth." Ben Carter joined the group, his scanner still recording everything. "What does this mean for us?" Admiral Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of galactic policy being rewritten in real time. "The coalition. Council has ordered a ceasefire while they debate your fate. But Captain Morrison, you must understand the position you have put us in. Your species has proven every fear we had about human violence. In 3 weeks on this world, you have caused more disruption than most species cause in centuries." Jake felt anger rising again, but he forced it down. This was bigger than his personal feelings now. "We defended ourselves," he said. "We fought, back when you tried to execute us without trial. If that makes us violent, then we're violent. But we're also still here and we're still human." "Yes," the Admiral said quietly. "You are still human. And that, Captain Morrison, may be exactly what the galaxy needs." The words surprised everyone, including the Admiral himself. But as he continued speaking, his meaning became clear. For 5,000 years, the coalition has maintained peace by avoiding conflict. We have prevented war by preventing change. We have preserved stability by removing anything that might disturb it. But stability is not the same as growth, and peace without challenge becomes stagnation. Elena Ross, their xenobiologist, had been listening from behind the medical station. She stepped forward with data pad in hand. "Admiral, I've been studying the environmental impact of our mining operation. The contamination we caused, it actually created a new ecosystem. The alien bacteria mixed with compounds from our equipment and formed something that didn't exist before. It's not destruction, it's evolution." Tony Webb nodded eagerly. "The water contamination we caused, it's being cleaned by organisms that adapted to process our waste. The planet is actually healthier now than when we arrived." Admiral Kethavar looked at the data Elena was showing him, his 4 eyes widening in surprise. "This is impossible. Contamination should destroy ecosystems, not improve them. Unless the contamination comes from a species that has learned to adapt to its own mess," Pete Chang added. "Humans have spent centuries learning to survive the environmental damage we caused. We've developed technologies and techniques to clean up after ourselves. Maybe that's what we bring to the galaxy." The Admiral was studying the readings carefully. "Your people survived on a world you had badly damaged?" "We're still learning," Amy Clark said. "But yes, we're getting better at cleaning up our mistakes. We're getting better at living with the consequences of our actions." Jake saw an opportunity and took it. "You've been watching Earth for 300 years. Have you seen us getting better, or just getting worse?" Admiral Kethavar was quiet for a long time. "We have focused on your capacity for destruction. We did not analyze your capacity for recovery." Karen Miller climbed out of the ruins of the mining station, covered in dirt, but grinning. "Admiral, want to see something interesting? The minerals we extracted, we can use them to repair not just our ship, but to build better environmental processing equipment. We can give back more than we took." The alien commander was beginning to understand something that the Coalition had missed in all their centuries of observation. Humans were destructive, yes, but they were also creative. They broke things, but they also fixed things. They caused problems, but they also solved problems. "The Council is still debating," Admiral Kethavar said finally. "But I will carry your words to them. I will tell them that perhaps the galaxy needs a species that is willing to make mistakes, as long as they are also willing to learn from those mistakes." Ryan Stone, who had been keeping watch during the conversation, called out from his position. "Captain, we've got movement in the forest. Zalari approaching, but they're not in attack formation." The tall, scaled aliens emerged from the trees slowly, and Jake was surprised to see Vextai among them. The alien diplomat's shoulder was bandaged, but he was alive and moving under his own power. Vextai approached the group and spoke in his musical language to Admiral Kethavar. The Coalition commander's expression grew thoughtful as he listened. "What are they saying?" Jake asked. "The Zalari have been watching your people work," Admiral Kethavar translated. "They say that while humans are destructive, they are also, how do you say, fixers. They have seen you trying to repair the damage you caused. They request that you be allowed to complete the restoration of their sacred places before you leave." Jake looked around at his battered crew, at the ruined camp, at the alien beings who had gone from enemies to observers to something approaching allies. "We'll fix what we broke," he said. "But Admiral, we want something in return." "What do you want, Captain Morrison?" "We want the chance to prove that humanity deserves a place in your galaxy, not as prisoners or criminals, but as equals. We're late to the galactic community. Our arrival was violent and unwelcome, but we're here now. Give us the chance to show you that different doesn't always mean wrong." Admiral Kethavar looked at the humans, then at the Zalari, then up at the Coalition, fleet waiting in orbit. The decision he made would affect the future of 2 civilizations. "The Council will hear your proposal," he said finally. "But understand, Captain Morrison, if we allow humanity into the galactic community, you will be watched constantly. Any sign that your violent nature threatens other species, and the quarantine will be reimposed permanently." "We understand," Jake replied. "But Admiral, you'll be watching a species that never gives up, never stops trying to be better, and never accepts that failure is final. Maybe that's exactly what your peaceful galaxy needs." As the alien ships began to withdraw and both species began the long process of learning to coexist, Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of humanity's first contact and smiled. They had arrived among the stars exactly as violent and unwelcome as everyone had feared, but they were still here, still human and still fighting for their place in the universe. And sometimes, that was enough.